So for all of those reasons, I think AI is less popular this tech wave relative to every other tech wave. And that's a very different takeaway at a time, especially for investors, where we're being asked to commit more money than we've ever been at this early stage, hundreds of billions of dollars. The 700 billion that is going to be expended this year alone by the big tech companies is at least 2x what the US spent in today's dollars, sending 12 men to the moon from the late 60s to the early 70s. And 52 years later, we just send four really cool astronauts around the moon to take beautiful pictures. So what I'm getting at is that this stuff takes time. We're spending huge amounts of money. The benefits are there. They're just a little bit in the distance, especially for businesses first and then consumers second. And it's not clear to the consumers because they're being really terrified by job losses. They're also being terrified by the founders of these companies basically talking about all the fearful things, the regulators that then seeing the reflection and saying, oh, we got to protect our people, etc. We've all been brainwashed by science fiction and Skynet and all of that. And then I've written, a lot of, being absolutely playing with these technologies at the highest tiers as a consumer first. And it's very clear that technologies are not ready. They can barely do the things that these companies are telling us what they can do, even at the high paid tiers. There's a lot of reworking to be done, and there's a lot of stuff still to be worked through in research labs first before they can be commercialized. So the gap between what is being promised and what is being feared is so wide. It is not in the conventional wisdom. Media is not picking up on this. You can't really hear it even in the podcasts from all the big wigs, the CEOs of these companies, because now they all have familiar, comfortable platforms like Cheeky Pint and TBPN. In many cases, they bought the podcast networks where they can go and talk 1, 2, 3 hours about the amazing things about AI, but they don't talk about these fundamental, smaller things and the realities of how we're going to make this stuff more joyful step by step. And we can break everything I've talked about in smaller pieces and talk about it in a systematic way. And then from an analytical point of view, it becomes much clearer that there's a big gap in this tech wave versus any other tech wave between people really understanding what this stuff is and what it can potentially do, and why it's so much more interesting than almost all the tech waves before that were all very key steps to go through to get here. But that is not being explained. We're talking about it in terms of these amazing, crazy possibilities. It's going to cure cancer and so on. And most regular people, it's just not clear. And it's barely clear to even the muckety mucks who are building it. And I've talked to many of them, and it's clear this is their reality day in and day out, and they're drinking the Kool-Aid. They're in their own bubble, and it's very, very tough to get through that bubble unless you go and actually load up some of these AI agents on your Mac Mini and muck around with it and try to get it to do this versus that. And then you realize, oh my God, there's so many blocking and tackling pieces to go. So I hope you found this discussion a little bit useful. It's a little bit heartfelt from a bottom-up perspective, but it's showing up in the data. That is why I'm talking about it. The Stanford AI Index study just out. There'll be links again in the show notes. Is just one of many, many, many inklings of this. And again, this stuff is as popular or unpopular as Congress, as it were, 30%. And that's the message. So these are the reasons why AI is relatively unpopular.